Hi, this is Brendan Allen from ComicCon.com, sitting here with Cullen Bunn and Anton Kromoff. We're taking our second run at werewolf cocktails this week because we tried to do this a few weeks ago, and Cullen decided to puke his guts out. So it was just me and Anton. We did a short version. So this is the full version. And here we go. Comics and Cocktails, number 4, werewolf cocktails.
Hey, what's up,
How you
guys?
guys doing?
Was I sick? Is that why I wasn't there?
That's
Yeah,
the excuse you gave anyway. So, I mean, if
No,
that
it's
wasn't true,
probably.
just
I
tell on
mean, whatever I
yourself.
said is true. I just couldn't remember.
yeah, you were sick as a dog, or I guess large lycanthrope type beast. Either or.
Yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, nice. All right, so Cullen, you weren't here last time. Why don't you start us off with one of your cocktails? What do you got for us?
All right, so I have not tried either of these cocktails. I came up with what I thought I wanted to make. I made them just a few minutes ago, within 10 minutes of recording, and I've not tried them yet. So I'm gonna start with the one I think I'm gonna like the least.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I made I call it a full moon, the full moon martini. Oh no, the silver bullet martini.
Wait, hang on. Is that a fresh fruit on your garnish there, not
It
dried?
is. I thought maybe today I would shake things up and
Has
do
this
a
ever
fresh
happened?
instead of a dehydrated. But yeah, so this is it's a take on a martini. I made it with silver tequila, vermouth, and lemon juice, and some orange bitters, and of course a fresh lemon twist on top. So to celebrate, since we're talking about werewolves, here we go. The silver bullet. Let's end some werewolf life right now.
Well, I appreciate what you did there with the silver tequila instead of going with the silver bullet cores, because all the ones that I saw that were called the silver bullet when I was looking at this a month ago, they all had cores in it. It was just so that was like a Boilermaker with cores. So I like the direction you went here.
That's what this morning I went to the store and I had in my mind I was going to buy a Coors Light just to have a silver bullet on hand just to drink between drinks. And I forgot while I was there. I was like, what was I was going to buy some sort of beer and I can't remember I couldn't remember what it was. So this is actually really delicious. It's great. Tastes a little bit. It's got a little bit of because of the tequila and the lemon, a little bit of a margarita flavor to it.
Well, and we know how much you love margaritas, so that's a natural draw for you.
But it's a drier drink. I will make this again when I'm not talking about werewolves, which is rare.
When are you not talking about werewolves?
Usually werewolves come up in conversation. So,
well, Anton was just saying a minute ago before we went live that one of the games that he's going to talk about, he talks about all the time anyway, whether he's doing a show or not, right?
Well, it's Wolf Moon, which has one of those most phenomenal authors, one Cullen Bunn, and the lore in it is pretty spectacular, and it ends up coming up all the time in D&D games and stuff. The way that the mythology is slightly different than what we traditionally see in a werewolf story, where the curse jumps from person to person. So you only have sort of that span of time where the moon is full to figure out who is a werewolf before it takes over somebody else. And it's just such a unique twist. I feel like I've known you for ages, man, but I still have no idea where you pulled that from. It's genius. Like it's brilliant.
Let's talk more about how genius I am.
Yeah, I mean, I don't normally say it in mixed company, but yeah, it is really a cool concept.
So I am like a lycanthrope of genius because I'm pretty stupid most of the time, and then occasionally, like I power up and I get some great idea, and I don't know exactly where the idea for Wolf Moon came about. I remember years ago I was trying to woo Matt Kent into doing a book with me. And eventually we ended up doing a book called The Tooth, but I was trying to get him to do a book with me, and what I pitched to him at a Mexican restaurant one day was a werewolf book that would be like no other, in that the werewolf would really not be in it that much. It would be moving from person to person, and we would focus more on how the people who were affected by this werewolf, how they were dealing with life. So it would be, the werewolf would destroy their lives because it would manifest for 3 days and then move on. And in very different ways, people would deal with different aspects of what that meant. And it was supposed to be a big sprawling sort of almost a soap opera. And it didn't happen at that time. And then a few years later, I was talking to Wildstorm about doing a book, and I pitched them what was then called Wandering Wolf. And they loved the idea, but they wanted a little more actiony, and that's why we got the version that we got. It was drawn by Jeremy Hahn, he's a great artist. It had the worst title they wanted a different title. It was the worst title I've ever heard. They wanted to call it Shape Walker.
That sounds like something they sell at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the cooking.
Right?
No, that's just that's an attempt to beat the trademark because there's nothing out there with that name.
Like except some ab workout machine.
Right. That's like Suzanne Summers and Chuck Norris's new joint that they released, the Shape Walker workout at home system or something. Like that's walk yourself to a better shape. Like, that doesn't work for a horror title at all.
It took a while for the book to actually come out, and by the time it came out, I was able to convince them to go with Wolf Moon, which was a much better title. But yeah, it's a book I'm very proud of. I don't even know if it's still in print right now. I don't know if you can.
We can check that real quick with the wonders of the internet here. So Anton, you did the same. You said the same 2 drinks that you did last time, which were fantastic. Mine were terrible. Anton's were great. So why don't you go ahead and walk us through another one of those?
Yeah, so this is the Royal Hunt. It is 1.5 ounces of ginger citrus cocktail mixer. I put a few dashes of bitters in it. This time it was cranberry, and then 1.5 ounces of Sailor Jerry's spiced rum. And then you can hear it's shaken with ice, and then I poured it into a chilled blender bottle because these are easier for me to carry. And then I topped it with Luxardo grenadine, and then there's 3 maraschino cherries hanging out in there. If it was going to be in a glass and look pretty, they'd be on a tiny sword. Because that's the Royal Hunt, man. That's how you hunt down your werewolves when you have problems with them in medieval, Europe or whatnot.
That's fair.
Yeah, but it's creamy and super good.
It sounds delicious, and the recipes are going to be we're going to have the recipes where people can see them.
Yeah, they're going to be up. They're going to be up on the thing. So Eric's going to make the cards for those to put them up. So people can.
Super good.
Cool. Okay, so my drinks last time were awful. They were terrible. I hated them. I felt like sick to my stomach after drinking them last time. They were so gross.
I hated them too.
So you didn't even watch it.
Was so sick.
We talked about stuff in the video. We talked about stuff in the video that I know you didn't watch it because later it came up and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm on to you.
Or I just forget instantly.
But my sister Kate is a bartender, and I called her up and I was like, "Hey, Katie, this is what I did." She's like, "You idiot!" And so she sent me some good recipes. And this one's really visual. This one is called, what's it called? It's called the Full Moon Martini. And what that is there's a spherical ice cube that's made of coconut cream and water. And there's 8 ounces of coconut cream, 8 ounces of water, spread between 4 sphere molds. 1 ounce of vodka is the recipe. I put 2 ounces. And a couple of blackberries to garnish. And I couldn't figure out why the blackberries, but I had to look it up. And I guess blackberry nightshade is a cure for lycanthropy. And so blackberry, you can't actually eat the nightshades, but blackberry nightshade is close. So this is pretty much vodka with a coconut cream ice cube in it.
That's really cool. When you sent the picture, I had not read the recipe yet, so I was like, "Did he put a ball of ice cream in there?"
That's what I thought. I thought it was like an affogato or whatever they're called. I was like, "This is going to be real interesting."
Now, the thing about it too is that that is pure vodka on the outside. You didn't add anything to that. So this one, you actually I put the 2 ounces on there, so there's more surface area of the vodka to melt the ice cube because you want the ice cube to melt. You want that coconut cream to get into the vodka because that first sip I just had right there is pure vodka. But as this thing sits, I made one for my wife. As it sits, it kind of starts to settle into the vodka and it makes it more of a creamy coconut drink instead of just straight vodka. But it's very visual. It looks like a little moon sitting there. And when you pull it out of the sphere cube maker thing, it gets little pox in it that looks like the face of the moon. So it's a pretty cool looking drink.
That's awesome.
Awesome. All right, so I'm still finishing my drink, so let's talk werewolves here. I know you guys have already talked about your favorite werewolf movies. All right, so when you think of werewolves, what are the movies, the books, the comics, the TV shows that spring to mind?
Well, go ahead, Anton. It looked like you were about to
For me, like, this is a crazy story, but like this is something that'll always stick with me. I had one of those giant boom box. We'll get there; it'll make sense. One of those giant boom boxes that had, like, it took like 18 of those huge D cell batteries, and it had a little black and white TV screen in it, right? And it was like super fuzzy. And there was a really horrible storm here in Virginia. My parents were out of town for like a week or two. I think I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old. And I was home by myself, and I just had this big boombox thing, and all the power was out, and I managed to get it working, and it picked up Fox. And there was an episode of the X-Files that was first airing that night, and I think it's called Shapes. And it's the werewolf episode of the X-Files. And like, I am not a person who is scared by things other than like a particularly horrifying poop-looking monster from a beloved childhood film. But other than that, like, things don't give me a fright. But I remember staring at this black and white screen that was, smaller than my head, and being captivated by this werewolf story. And to this day, that is still to me one of the coolest representations of werewolf, like, on film, that I have ever seen. I love that episode. Like, to the heart of me, it is awesome. If you have not seen it, go find it. It's an old X-Files episode, but it is phenomenal. They do such a good job with visual storytelling in it. It's great.
I thought when you said this was going to be a weird story, I swore you were going to tell a story about how you were wandering the hills,
right,
and came across a werewolf and had to battle for your life.
Look, man, I'm not saying that fictional accounts of a certain child in a wheelchair have not been exaggerated, and may not be based on real life stories of a particular wheelchair using individual. Mine was never called the silver bullet, but it is what it is. I'll just, let you draw your own conclusions there.
I was thinking werewolves. One of the, I have a couple of nightmares that I remember from when I was a kid, and I'm talking kindergarten, pre-kindergarten. A werewolf nightmare was one of the first nightmares I really remember having. I mean, I don't remember much more about it than my parents were in our house, and I was outside, and they were turning into werewolves, and I could see the werewolf shape through the windows. But it's stuck with me all these years.
That's such a great, like, cinematic setup. You thought of that when you were like 6?
Oh, I was kindergarten, so probably 5. But I remember. I mean, I can right now remember the dream of looking at the house, looking at the certain windows of our house, and seeing the shapes behind the the filmy curtains. So where was one of the first sort of monster that really scared the hell out of me.
Nice.
Well, yeah, so I lived with my father when I was real young, and like, he let me watch whatever. And the thing was, like, it's not that he was super progressive or that he thought I could handle it away. He just didn't care. So I think the first 3 movies that I watched as a kid that, like, I actually loaded the thing and I sat down and watched were Chud, Purple Rain, and American Werewolf in London. And I was like 6
One
years
of these
old.
things is not like the other one.
But I was like 6 watching these, like, horror films basically, and then just inappropriate, like, whatever. But I remember Werewolf in London, and I remember watching the dude's face, like, stretch out and stuff, and it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, it wasn't the first werewolf movie I'd seen, I'm sure, but an American Werewolf in London. I kind of feel I have werewolf movies that I like, that I probably would say I like more. But An American Werewolf in London is probably the masterpiece of werewolf cinema. I mean, I don't know what is not. Those nightmare sequences are absolutely they're god awful. I mean, they are just terrifying. And I hear people say the effects don't hold up, and I'm like, I'm sorry, they do. It is.
Well, and practical effects too, because there was no such thing as CGI and stuff back there. When you watch that guy's face stretch out, and you're watching the whiskers pop out and stuff like that, they did that all by hand. I mean,
And it's the first instance I remember of the dream where you wake up from the nightmare and you're still having the nightmare. It's the first instance in a movie that I remember that. I mean, I'm sure it's been done plenty of places and it's definitely been done since, but there's the dream sequence where he wakes up, but he's still in the nightmare and it kicks into another nightmare. Those nightmare sequences as a kid just they just terrified me.
Was that Rick Baker or was that Tom Savini who did the special effects?
That was Rick Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Genius effects.
Yeah. And there's a whole story and I wish I could remember it. I don't hold this kind of trivia in my head long enough, but the team from An American Werewolf in London was somehow connected to The Howling. And there was like some sort of, not a feud, but there was some sort of weird connectivity with The Howling, which I just watched in the theater for the first time in a theater, a few months ago. Which is also a great werewolf movie. My memory of The Howling is a lot better than The Howling is. I mean, it's still a great movie. I still love it. But
I'm finding out with a lot of the stuff that I loved when I was younger is that the memory of it is a lot better than it was. I screening movies to watch with my kids. It's like, oh, we'll just watch Bill and Ted, and then like homophobic slurs come up in the thing. It's like, oh, man, really? That was in there, like
that stuff. Yeah, I just noticed that in some other movie the other day at night. I was like, oh wow, But The Howling. It's still a great movie, but man, I remember that movie. I remember people on the bus when I was going to school, went and saw The Howling, and they were talking about it, and like, oh, and he says he's pulling back his head, and I was like, oh, this is the scariest movie I've ever not seen. Because these people are just telling me about these horror movies. Yeah. There was a girl on the bus that saw every horror movie, and she just told me about them on Monday morning. She was a few years older, and she would tell just in detail, vivid, inaccurate detail, all these movies, and she would just tell the stories of these movies. And I'm like, what a wonderful storyteller. I was like, this is the greatest.
Hey, do you write comics by any chance?
Yeah, no, she should.
I wanted to watch a werewolf film that I hadn't seen. So I hit up a friend of the website, Ariel Dyer, from Not Your Final Girl podcast. And I was like, hey, what's a film that's more recent that I probably haven't seen? And she's like, oh, look up I Am Lisa. I was like, okay. She's like, it's totally cheesy, totally low budget. She's like, but it's way more enjoyable than it has any right to be. And I was watching this film. It's available right now on Amazon Prime Video, but it's also, you can watch it with ads on Peacock, Vudu, Tubi, Redbox, is on everything. But like they had no budget for this film, like no budget at all. Mm-hmm. And there are no special effects. There's one point where they put prosthetics on the girl's forehead or something to make her look like a werewolf, but you don't see a wolf in the entire film and they still tell the story. And I think that's pretty impressive. When you've got like no Hollywood budget, nothing, you got a couple $100 and a camera and you make a movie, it's ridiculously adequate.
Yeah, no, I am not familiar with it. When you told me, before we started recording, you said, I'm going to tell you a movie you haven't seen. I was like, I got you. Yeah, I've seen it. I'm not familiar with I Am Lisa, but I'm going
to. It's basically, I Spit on Your Grave with wolves.
All right.
Like this girl gets beaten to death and left in the woods to get eaten by the werewolves, and she gets turned instead. And then she goes back.
Jennifer's Body. You're telling me the story of Jennifer's Body.
And then the people that like wronged her, she goes back and she gets them back in different ways or whatever. But it's 100% the same story, and there's no special effects at all, and they have no budget. And I still watched it all the way through. I didn't turn it off. So I mean, that's something.
I'll check it out. I'm always up for something new.
You got to take it with a grain of salt, though, because it's not the best film you'll ever see, but it is entertaining for reasons.
I think the fact that I'm here doing this recording with the two of you should tell you that I take everything with a grain of salt.
Oh, that hurt right here.
You're welcome. That was a good one.
All right, so Cullen, what other drinks do you have for us, boss?
So, speaking of An American Werewolf in London, I concocted another beverage that I call An American Werewolf in London. And look, it's in my slaughtered lamb pint glass, which you can get from Fright Rags. It is so it's London dry gin with a Kentucky bourbon. In this case, I used Bullet. Some lime juice. You mix that all up, and a little bit of bitters, and you top it off with a ginger beer, and I drizzle a little bit of Luxardo syrup in there, which all
You guys put
sinks
the
to the bottom.
Luxardo. Everything with Luxardo. There's Luxardo
Yeah.
in everything. Just drink Luxardo.
And I have a little mint in top of it. And it's pretty good. It's essentially a suffering bastard. Now that I really think about it, but it's for me, it's an American Werewolf in London. I actually like both of these drinks. I would make these on just whenever, and this one's a little more refreshing than the martini.
My vodka drink is getting progressively better. I just figured I should update you on that. Like, it came out pretty rough, just that first vodka sip, but as the coconut's like melting into it, it's getting sweeter and like creamier. So I'm enjoying it more. But it could also be the alcohol. So,
do you guys remember a TV show called Werewolf from 1986 or 87? That's all it was called, was Werewolf.
No.
No, I was 8, and I don't think we had cable.
So it wasn't a cable show. It came on like ABC, like at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, or at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
1987.
So this show was called Werewolf, and it was essentially the same kind of setup as the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. It was about a dude who got bitten by a werewolf and roamed from place to place, and every episode he would stumble into some other trouble, and he would happen to turn into a werewolf in the moment, in some moment, and he was hunting down the werewolf who had turned him, who was played by Chuck Connors. The great Chuck Connors played this guy. He had a patch over his eye, and he wore he looked like a fisherman, but he had a patch over his eye or something. And he was hunted. There was a hunter who was after him every episode. Very, very much the Hulk with a werewolf. I don't know how many seasons it ran. I know it ran at least
2 seasons, 1987 and 1988.
Because I know he eventually catches Chuck Connor, and then he finds out that no, Chuck Connor's not the progenitor of the werewolf curse.
Do you want to hear the synopsis, the summary here?
Sure. It's probably very different than I remember.
Young Eric has been bitten by a werewolf. However, he's not particularly thrilled by this turn of affairs and wishes to escape his curse. To do so, he must find and kill the founder of his particular werewolf clan. The series traces his efforts to A, track down the founder, B, keep from hurting innocent lives due to his lycanthropy, and C, stay one step ahead of folks who wish to kill him due to his werewolf nature.
Well, there you go. I don't know who did I remember he had a pentagram on his hand, and it would bleed before he turned into a werewolf. And when he turned into a werewolf, he was a man in a werewolf suit, or it was a man in a werewolf suit, but he ran on all fours. So his arms, he was always moving in weird, he kind of had this weird gait when he was running across the, whatever swamp.
Like the xenomorph suit when the guy was down on all fours running towards you?
Yeah, maybe a little bit like that. But I have fond memories of that show, but I have not seen it since.
I'm looking at the picture of the hunter guy that you're talking about with his eye patch, and his cap looks exactly like the cap that you're wearing right there. So maybe it affected you more than you realize subconsciously when you were purchasing that hat.
I think you're lying, but okay, whatever. If I look as cool as Chuck Connors, I'm all right with it. Chuck Connors was a bad dude. I think. I mean, I don't know. Was he problematic in some way?
Okay, so Chuck Connors is the lead?
No, Chuck Connors was the werewolf. He was the werewolf.
There's an old guy in the back. So handsome man that looks like Hasselhoff in the front.
That's the lead.
There's a dude in the back holding a shotgun with like
Hunter.
Boss Hog mirrored lenses and a cowboy
that's Hunter.
And then there's a guy with a cap that looks exactly like yours, with a big old eye patch, white hair, and just wrinkles everywhere.
That's Chuck Connors, formerly known as the Rifleman. He was a big star in the 50s, 60s, or whatever.
If this is the look you're going for, Cullen, I think you're halfway there. You
really?
got the hat. You just need to get out.
The look you're going for is a guy who's going to get punched in the forehead when I see you next time. Then you have succeeded.
Cool. All right. So, Anton, you had a second drink for us too.
I will let you know that man does not make threats idly. I've been punched in the head so many times. So my second drink is Moonrise. So it's 1.5 ounces of grind espresso rum. Grind's the brand. It's very good. 1.5 ounces of amaretto, and then 5 ounces of almond milk. I shook it with ice, strained it, then added whipped cream in the shaker with a dash of chocolate syrup and shook that until it was thickened, and then poured it over top in a chilled glass. This is a blender bottle, so it's all kind of diffused together. Again, super creamy, super good. In the wintry months, it's kind of a nice, like, it feels festive in some ways. I'm sure if you sprinkled cinnamon on top.
I was going to say, that sounds like a drink I'd want to drink on Christmas Day. I mean, it sounds really good.
It is, man. It's it goes down super smooth too. So, not that I'm one who imbibes a lot of alcohol at one sitting, but if I was that type of person, I could definitely tuck in with 5 or 6 of these.
Wait, wasn't there a moonshine story we were supposed to hear?
Well, yes, there is a moonshine story with Anton. And moon. See, it all ties together.
That's what we were saying. Moonshine. There's not enough werewolf drinks with moonshine in them. It's such a missed opportunity.
I have so much moonshine in my liquor cabinet, and I tried to come up with something that would, but it's all like flavored moonshines and stuff like that. I have one bottle of like pure, strychnine strong moonshine.
It's cut with antifreeze.
Yeah, but I couldn't. I just I don't know. I couldn't find one that spoke to me. But yes, here's the thing to know about Anton. When you go to Anton came and visited me a couple of years back. And what I learned about Anton is when you go to like a bar that has like a brewery that has like flights of beer, Anton does all of them. He can't just have like the little stack of 4. He's like, I want them all. So that's why I remember we went to a little brewery here, a microbrewery here called Lost Signal. And I remember he's like, I want all the beers. And then a few days later, Anton and I decided we were going to go to Branson, Missouri. And Branson, for those of you who don't know, is the Las Vegas of the country music scene. And we did Branson in one day. We did as much of Branson as we could do. We went to wineries. We went to Bigfoot expedition adventures. We tore through Branson, and we decided we were going to go to one of the moonshine distilleries there. I think it's Smith Creek is the one in Branson. And like all the moonshine distilleries, you go in, if you put your driver's license on the counter, you can sample moonshines until the cows come home. And Anton and I went, and of course, Anton's got to try everything.
They don't charge you for it? They just give it to you?
No, look, if you go to a town with moonshine distilleries, you can sample all day long if you just put your license, give them your driver's license. Everyone I've ever been to, and I've been to many, they're all the same.
Why do you have to give me a license?
I think it's just
legal. It's a legal
some
thing.
sort of legal
they have to
thing.
hold your license while you're drinking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's the big moonshine distillery?
In Branson?
Well, not in Branson, just in general, like in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, the big one there. Yeah, they have the same setup. You can sample moonshines all day long.
Interesting.
But anyway, in Branson, there's only one, and that's Smith Creek. And Anton's like, I'm going to try all the moonshines. And they give you the spiel. They run you through. And if you get to the beginning, they'll run you through again. And Anton tried
to scoop you up off the floor, put you back in your chair, and then.
Well, here's the thing about moonshine. Here's what I found out about moonshine that day, because I tried to keep up with Anton. Moonshine hits you about 30 minutes after you drink it. Mm-hmm. Because we did all that moonshine, Anton much more than me. And we were like, hey, there was nothing in that moonshine. It must have been watered down or fake. Let's go to Joe's Crab Shack and drink some sugary cocktails before we leave to drive home. And I don't know if you and again, we were still like, whatever, we're fine. Again, if you've ever watched The Three Stooges, there's an episode where they mix a drink in an old boot. They make this drink in the back of like a pharmacy shop and they drink it. And they're walking around just fine. And you hear the sounds like whoosh, 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 and then it goes boom and it hits them and they're super drunk. That's what happened to us 30 minutes after we walked out of the Moonshine Distillery. And it was an awful, I mean, we stumbled to the car and we're like, we're just gonna have to sleep this one off, boys. This isn't happening. We're sleeping in Branson for a while. Because we thought we were absolutely A-OK, 1,000% fine. And halfway across the parking lot, it was like, whoa, our legs went out from under us. We're hanging on, we're like, whoa, I'm hanging on. It was awful. And I credit Anton to teaching me never to try all of the moonshines ever.
So what is the limit? Like what is it? Like I mean, are they serving 1 ounce?
No,
sample?
they're smaller. They're super small. They're like thimbles.
Okay.
But there's 12 of them. And then after the
So
12,
the 12 makes 3 or 4 drinks total?
Well, 12 probably makes 3 full shots, like 3
Okay.
like shots. But then they say, oh, we got a special Moonshine Bloody Mary. Let's try that now, everybody. Because the goal is they want you to buy a bunch of moonshine on the way out.
Oh, and the drunker they get you, the more your inhibitions go down, and the more you're willing to pull out your wallet, right? So.
I'll say this: if Anton and I had like a hotel room there at the Branson Landing next to the moonshine place, we may never have left. It may have just been this is where we live now.
So that sounds like an investment opportunity. Is if you buy some land next to the distillery and put up an overnight crash pad.
You know what? And this is I hate to even tell Anton this. I've been since Anton and I went.
He went without you, Anton. How you feel about that?
It's okay. I mean,
they now have a tiki bar.
No.
They now have a daiquiri bar on the landing. And right across from the moonshine joint is a place where you can sample popcorns of various varieties.
I've told you, as soon as this plague is over, I'm coming to visit for at least a week. So
this sounds like we need to get together and do a live show.
We'll let you know when it happens because it's going to be we'll have to get a hotel room because I can't drive after that moonshine.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Or we'll have to have a party bus. We can get like the comics and cocktails party bus.
We gotta get the website to spring for the big vinyl logo on the side of the bus.
We'll do a GoFundMe and see if we can make that happen.
An actual roads show.
Oh my gosh, how much fun would that be? Like go state to state and go to the worst tourist trap alcohol places in every state.
See, what you need to learn about me is I will go to a tourist trap place and be the happiest human being you've ever seen in your entire life. You show me a giant ball of twine, the third largest frying pan in the northern hemisphere.
Third largest, not the second, not the first, the third largest.
An alligator farm that has like 3 alligators in a tank, but a bunch of goofy shit on t-shirts. Like, you show me that stuff, and I am so excited. We went on a Bigfoot tour, and Cullen took a picture and texted it to my wife. And they both still agree it is the happiest they have ever seen me in my entire life.
It's not, and this is the stupidest thing. And again, in Branson, you take a bus out to the woods and they take you on a Bigfoot tour, and Bigfoot fights drug dealers out there in the woods.
I want to go to Branson, Missouri so bad.
Amazing.
I want to do this so bad.
On the way to Bigfoot, I took a picture of Anton, and it's not the happiest I've ever seen Anton. It's the happiest I've ever seen a human being. Still, it is like that's what I aspire to. Someday, I'd love to be that happy.
You've set the bar for just giddy, ridiculous happiness. How do you feel about that?
I love the concept of the goofy stuff that you can do, like on roadside attractions, and then like I'm there with Cullen, and that's a good time in itself. Like, it just. the pure unadulterated joy. I'm just going to set this scene for you real quick. We don't have to focus on the Bigfoot tour.
Make it a werewolf and it's fine.
That sounds like a whole other show.
Cullen and I get to this thing, and it's this giant pickup truck where they've put like wooden benches in the back, and it's got like a covering over it, like some African safari that you see on like Mutual at Omaha. It's ridiculous. And we get into the back of this truck, and this dude comes out who's no bigger than a beanpole. Old gentleman, long silver ponytail down past his waist. He gets into the front seat, and they flick on this audio recording that has this really bad British accent of some doctor who's going to tell us about Bigfoot, right? And he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be here, blah, blah, blah." The dude driving the truck, our tour guide, is the most deadpan human being I have ever encountered. Oh my God, we are going on a Bigfoot tour. I mean, like the road is washed out, and he's like, "Oh no, there is danger. I must go this way." But he's talking. It's not even a recording. They could have just recorded this dude, but he is so bored with the whole thing, which makes it so much sweeter. It was an amazing experience. Like,
yeah, but you don't want Anton. That's fine. But listen. At some point in the ride, the road that we were supposed to go on was washed out. We had to take a road we weren't even supposed to take. And that's where the drug dealers lived.
That's where you could have honestly, like, legitimately ran into Bigfoot, because he stays away from the path that they use usually, right?
It was so good. We got Bigfoot says no to drugs bracelets at the end. They give you like these little Lance Armstrong rubber bracelets.
You know what this story reminds me of? I was out your way, Cullen. We went to Uranus.
Yeah.
They've got Uranus fudge, and they've got the sideshow there.
Hold on, you went to where?
It's just, wait, no,
excuse you, sir.
Uranus, Missouri, right?
Oh, Uranus, Missouri. Yes.
Didn't you just text me pictures of that?
I did.
No, so they have all these. I mean, it's just the stupidest thing. They have these cutouts of like zebras, and you can put your head through the zebra's butt, and it's called like the Uranus Zoo. But they had a sideshow there, and the sideshow was actually decent. They had a sword swallower in there, and they had the two-headed duck and the two-headed turtles and all this. They had a live two-headed turtle, and that's actually kind of.
One lady takes some sort of like jumper cables and puts them to her tongue, and the little electricity jumps through her tongue.
Oh, she got the bifurcated tongue.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Anton has not been there, but
the sword swallower when I was there, because I know a sword swallower here in town. George the Giant lives here in Bakersfield, and he's like the world's tallest sword swallower. We see that guy everywhere. He's a good guy. But he was friends with the sword swallower there. I was like, "Yeah, I know George," and she was like, "What, George?" But it was the weirdest thing, because she's doing all these things, and she'll let you pay her like $5 tips or whatever to pull the sword out, or to take a picture of whatever weird sword, right? But the thing is, like, she hates touching people at all. So you pull the sword out, and she won't take it from you. She has you lay it down, and then she picks it up off the ground. It's like, I can pull this out your neck, but I can't hand it to you.
I mean, everybody's got a thing, man. I get it.
Well, Anton will be there next time he visits. That will be one of the first stops. Will be Uranus, Missouri. So,
but the best thing about Uranus, Missouri, is they have a fud packing plant right there, so you can get Uranus fudge packed in Uranus.
Yeah. And when you walk in, they say, "Welcome to Uranus." And when you walk out, they say, "Thanks for picking Uranus."
That place sounds like a gas.
It used to be like a strip club, a giant strip club out on the highway.
And now they make fudge.
And then
have a freak
This
show.
has nothing to do with werewolves, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, back to werewolves. Yes, back. Okay, so my second drink is called Hair of the Wolf. And I don't really understand this one, but I think it's going to be tasty. It's 8 ounces of hard cider, 8 ounces of pale ale, 1 ounce of bourbon, and half an ounce of cherry pucker. Oh, not cherry pucker, apple pucker. So it's in a
far,
chill
I'm
glass.
liking it.
Yeah.
It's a cool glass.
And that's good. It's really good.
Is that Fabio on your glass?
Yeah, it's Fabio with a hammer that he picked up off the ground or something. I don't know what that is. But it's nice, because I thought with all the apple in there, it was probably going to be like cloyingly sweet. But the apple really nicely balances with the pale ale, and makes the pale ale not so skunky, and kind of makes it a little. I mean, it's not a super fruity drink, even though it's got other fruit in it. And I think I'm gonna finish this one. That first one I haven't gotten through, but this is going to be done. But I had to figure out what the connection was between apples and werewolves. And the only thing I can think of was Fiona Apple sang that song, Werewolves.
Oh, well, there you go.
So here's the thing. There are some bits of folklore, European folklore, where if young maidens are out picking apples in the apple field and using their aprons to hold all of the apples, if they drop all of the apples and then they see the purity of the apron and the woman is pure, then the wolf will not consume them. They'll run off. And there's some strange like secondary lore that surrounds that, where it's like, a lot of times you'll have uh how do we label these people, the home deficient, they don't really have places to stay, so they wander the hills sort of scavenging, and they might have put sticks and leaves in their hair and mud on their faces to have a more lupine appearance to scare said young maidens and then steal the apples that were picked.
I read that story and I thought it was total horseshit till you just said that. So now
Wow.
maybe that's where the apples came from. I thought somebody was just pulling my leg, but
No, so when I was a kid, man, I didn't get a lot of TV time. It wasn't a thing. Again, small boombox screen television for my enjoyment. And I'll tell you, like 18D batteries are expensive for like a child of 10.
well, and they go quick too.
They do, but I had these really rad little like digest books. They were like kind of maybe the size of like a trading card and 60 pages or so. And they, there was one on like vampires and one on like werewolves and one on Atlantis and mummies. But there was all sorts of cool little like snippets, bits of lore on each page, where it would tell you like all these folklore about the different mythological creatures and monsters. And I was always kind of intrigued by it because I, as a child, fancied myself as, I'm going to grow up and be like a scholar that studies all of these monsters, because that's what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Well,
Now,
that's what
Monsterologist.
yeah,
that's what Cullen gets paid for, right?
exactly. But there were all those like cool little stories that were in it about like the apron and drinking water from like a wolf's footprint, and that was a way to get the curse without getting mauled by a werewolf. And ways to cure it with, like wolfsbane and henbane and different stone formations and that kind of thing. And I was always fascinated with stuff like that. So that's why that was front of mind. Because
I want those books, those books you just described. I really want them.
I'll see if I can. I think I have at least like 3 of them still in the nightside table. I'll take pictures and show them to you.
I have a bit of folklore I could share with you guys.
Go for it.
It's in the form of a knock knock joke.
Okay.
All right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
Who?
Werewolves of London.
Nice. Nice.
So stupid. So stupid.
My brain hurts right here, right behind my eye, right there from that.
So before we came on here, I jumped on Twitter and I just asked people what their favorite werewolf movies, books, TV shows might be. Do you guys want to hear some?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So the first person, my buddy Travis Knuckles, mentioned Werewolves Within. Have you guys watched this thing?
Yeah.
It's Josh Rubin directed it and wrote
That's
it.
the Pee Wee Herman guy.
No, not the Pee Wee Herman guy.
That's Paul, isn't it?
Are you sure? That sounds familiar. That sounds right. That sounds right.
Well, Werewolves Within is recent. That's like within the last 6 to 10 months. It's really good, and you should definitely check it out. It's awesome.
Isn't it based on a video game?
That's what shocks me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I watched this movie, and I was like, this is one of the funniest, most intelligent werewolf movies I've seen in forever. And then it says based on a video game. I was like, what?
Yeah, it's really good. That's one of the
really awesome.
What's the one? There's another series that happened like that Frank Thierry had to write, where they had a whole like video game setup or whatever, and they were trying to expand it into something that would be made into a movies, and it was like the plague of Europe wasn't really a plague; it was like zombie apocalypse or something like that.
Oh, that's his Aftershock book.
Yeah, it's Aftershock.
I can't remember the name of it right now.
It's definitely an Aftershock book.
Yeah,
it was at the Aftershock panel in New York Comic-Con 2018 that he was talking about it. But yeah, it was just like this ridiculous concept of like, we have 3 pieces of this 1,000-piece thing. Can you just fill in the rest?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Werewolves Within. I'm glad Travis mentioned that because it's one I just recently. I mean, it's been within the last few months I watched, and it's awesome. Josh Rubin also did a movie called Scare Me, which you should definitely watch. It's an awesome, like, one room set piece movie, and
Oh, I love those.
amazing. So we got a mention of Dog Soldiers, which is probably my favorite werewolf movie, hands down. If you haven't watched Dog Soldiers, you gotta watch it. It's amazing.
Right on.
Anton, you like that Dog Soldiers?
I do. You actually were the one that put me on that. We were talking a while back, and I think you were like, you really got to see it, and I had passed over it because I feel like the art on it or something was like, oh, I'm not going to give that the time of day. But then
super good.
Yeah, I gave it a shot, and the story's really cool. It's one of those like it almost feels like a Western in some ways, where you know your main character is going to survive or not, kind of thing. It's cool. The pacing is also really solid on that one.
Lots of mentions of An American Werewolf in London, as there should be.
Of course.
Here's a mention of Silver Bullet, also great, based on the great Stephen King and Bernie Wrightson's Cycle of the Werewolf.
Nobody brought up I Am Lisa. I'm shocked.
I have not seen an I Am Lisa yet. Here's someone mentioning Cycle of the Werewolf and Werewolf the Apocalypse, the role-playing game, which also, Brendan, you're not a role-playing gamer,
Not
right?
yet. Cullen's going to get, or not Cullen, Anton's going to get me into that.
I would love to run a Werewolf the Apocalypse game. It is such a great setup for a role-playing game, especially if you want to be a werewolf and just tear shit up. It's awesome.
I have all of the books on that.
Yeah, I have the majority of them. I got rid of a lot of my role-playing game books.
I just sent a response to your tweet, but I sent it under the wrong account. So Comic-Con just answered your tweet.
Nice.
There you go. The great Paul Tremblay, who's an amazing author in his own right. If you haven't read he's a great author. Ginger Snaps, he mentions.
Those are fun movies.
1000% correct. Ginger Snaps, all of them. It's a great trilogy of movies. Ginger Snaps, about these two sisters. The first one's about one of which becomes a werewolf, and it's her evolution into a werewolf. It's the sexiest werewolf you'll ever see on film. And then there's the sequel to that. And then there's I think the sequel is called Ginger Snaps Back. And then the third one.
No. Oh no, that sounds like what's the cheerleader movie that they just use the same title over and over again, but they added one word to the end?
Bring It On.
Bring It On, Bring It On, Bring It On again, Bring It On Strikes Back.
Hey, don't talk about those movies. Cullen will get mad.
I will, because I like Bring It On movies. And just so we're aware, there's a Bring It On horror movie coming out very soon.
Well, see, I'm a watch that. I will.
But then the third Ginger Snaps movies is like it goes back to like
isn't it a Western?
Yeah, it's like almost like a Western. Like they're in an old fort out in the middle of nowhere. They're great movies. They're awesome.
Nice.
I see some mention of when Batman became Man-Bat in Werewolf, or there was a werewolf in World's Finest Comics. I don't remember that.
Speaking of Batman and werewolves, there is a moment in Batman the Animated Series. I don't remember the precise episode, but it is still one of my favorite moments in any cartoon ever. Batman is fighting a werewolf in like an abandoned construction zone, right? There's like buildings and stuff that are there, and there's girders, and then there's like a fence, and it's kind of picketed at the top, and it's got one of those knothole holes through it. And the animation cuts to a dude who looks, kind of disheveled, like a dock worker who's been out late, maybe boozing, I don't know. And he kind of walks by and he looks at the knothole and he looks through the knothole, and then it cuts back to like Batman punching this werewolf in the face, and then it cuts back to this dude and he kind of leans back and he shrugs, and then he just walks off. And I don't know who that dude is, but in Gotham,
that's the story.
So weird stuff happens in Gotham. You gotta get roll with it.
No, I don't think it was Man-Bat. I think it was a werewolf. I think it was either the Dr. Monroe, like episodes where they had like the Tigra dude, and they turned Selena Kyle into like an actual cat lady, like a Tabaxi from D&D. Or it was something else, but it was like he was a werewolf. He had
that show was awesome. So I can't say I've seen every episode, but what an amazing show. Here's
guess.
someone mentioning a Thriller video.
You know what? Okay, hang on. When I was a kid and I saw Thriller for the first time, I swear to God, I thought it was a movie because it's like 30 minutes long. It's
Mhm.
halfway there, and there's progression from the beginning to the end. There's a great twist at the end. There's the dancing and the music, and the makeup was on point too. The special effects, talking about, watching the elongated nose and all the things happening with whatever. That was movie production.
That was Rick Baker. I believe that
Was
was
it
Rick
Baker on that too?
I think it was one of the greats.
Let's see.
My wife, the lovely Cindy Bunn, will tell you that her mom let her stay home from school the day that Thriller debuted on MTV.
It was Rick Baker. Okay. So as I was sitting there saying it, I was like thinking, wow, that looks a lot like, because they did a lot of the same effects kind of. That does look a lot like the effects that happen on American Werewolf in London. So that makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah. It was awesome. Great. Company of Wolves. Here's a mention of In the Company of Wolves. What a bizarre movie. I had it on Laserdisc when I was a kid. Have you guys seen this?
Seen a Laserdisc? Yeah, I had one of those.
Yeah.
Have you seen In the Company of Wolves?
I have not.
It was like an anthology movie of fairy tales about werewolves.
Nice.
Super cool.
Nice.
Here's some jackass mentioning I Am Lisa. Oh, it's you. Lots of mentions of the things we've already talked about. Someone mentioned An American Werewolf in Paris, and they obviously want to fight me. So that is.
I thought we were going to get this whole episode without mentioning that film. I really thought we were going to do it.
I'm surprised when you said Howl, of like the modern werewolf movies as far as effects go and just like setting a scene for very few shot locations. Howl was pretty phenomenal.
Love that Howl.
I love that movie, man. It's a good one.
I would say Bad Moon is an interesting werewolf movie you can watch, and it's based on a novel called Thor, which is kind of told from the point of view of the dog Thor. Yeah.
Nice.
The dog in Bad Moon is named Thor, but the novel is called Thor. It's based on is from his point of view, I guess. Novel wise, you guys have any favorite werewolf novels?
I have a bunch of the kind of trashy teen Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Those are good.
I have quite a few of those. I liked it more than Vampire the Masquerade or Mage the Ascension.
Novel wise, though, just real quick, Bad Moon is based on the book Thor. Animals is a great werewolf novel by Skip and Spectre. It's kind of got a splatter punky vibe, but it's sort of a punk. There is a movie version of Animals, but
does The Talisman count as a werewolf novel? The Talisman by Peter Straub and Stephen King.
Well, it has that element, doesn't it?
It does, because his friend from the other side is Wolf, this huge, like, hairy guy that has a credible sense of smell and stuff.
There you go. And I would say Wolf's Hour by Robert R. McCammon is a great novel. If you haven't read it, it's basically what if an American spy during World War II was a werewolf. So it's really cool.
Nice.
That'd be a good job for a werewolf.
Yeah, you can kick a bunch of Nazi ass.
That's my favorite kind to kick.
Well, we have to bring up Moonshine again because it's an amazing series, and it brings in Moonshine, which is one of the greatest names of a comic ever. Second place to that would be Redneck for the Vampire series by Donny Cates, because the red blood with the neck.
We get it.
Oh, okay. All right. I was just checking, making sure. All right. So that is the time that we have. We're actually running a little bit over here, but I think we'll be okay, hopefully. So on behalf of Comiccon.com, I'm Brendan Allen. That's Cullen Bunn. That's Anton Kromoff. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.